Fallout games often have weapons that you can only obtain in a certain way, like finding it at a specific location or after completing a quest. Sometimes they're a powerful reward for a job well done, and sometimes they're not. Can you beat Fallout 3 with only a repellent stick? I named myself Rufus, tried to look as much like a mole rat as possible, had a lovely chat with Father who immediately left, which shouldn't have surprised me. Nowhere in the world is a hat more useless than in an underground bunker. The repellent stick is a melee weapon, which means strength at 10 is a necessity, luck at 10 to boost all stats, and I left the rest at 4 because in the past when I've gone all in on 3 special stats, the perks I can choose from in the beginning are usually garbage. Aside from making myself one with a balloon as best I could, and following the overseer to hear him call me a brat, the birthday was about as exciting as a birthday could be. I killed the rad roach in the basement because, as I've said in other videos, this can't be skipped. It's effectively a requirement to kill the roach to proceed. So I did it and actually took the goat for the first time in the history of ever. I tried looking at someone else's test to see what they answered, but it didn't help. That last question was a doozy. Unfortunately, it didn't matter, since I got to pick my skills anyway: lockpick, medicine, and melee weapons. Before escaping the vault, I helped Bitch by failing my attempt to convince him to go and stomp on the roaches, so I gave him a BB gun and he killed the roaches, saving his stupid mother. I got the gun back and his jacket as a thank you. If I was smart, I would have ran off after giving him the BB gun. Maybe the overseer seeing him with it would make him sentence Butch to death. The rest of the escape was about what you'd expect. Threaten the overseer's daughter, avoid his goons, and you're out of the vault. My first stop was Mitten, because there's only one place in the game where you can get a repellent stick. Both involve entering Craterside Supply. You can pick a lock that requires a lockpick skill of 75, or you can do the Wasteland Survival Guide quest, because one of the objectives is to test the repellent stick out on mole rats. There's just one slight, little, teeny tiny problem. There are 3 chapters to the Wasteland Survival Guide quest, and the repellent stick can't be obtained until you start Chapter 2. The good news is that the quest is sort of a way to introduce you to various mechanics in the game, almost like an advanced tutorial, so none of it is very difficult. Objective number 1 was to bask in the warmth of Adam's eternal glow. I stood next to an undetonated nuclear warhead that could explode at any moment for about 4 minutes, until my nose started to get even bigger, which was a sign that I'd begun to mutate, and that I was ready to face Moira and hopefully give her some second-hand radiation sickness. After she sort of cured me, I'd left to gather supplies from the super-duper mega mart. The mart was hit worse than I imagined. The shopping carts were in complete disarray. This is what the government secretly refers to as a Category 4 scenario. I'd put a few of them back where they belonged when the bullets started flying all over the place, which made me think that maybe video game cart pushing wasn't the right career path for me. I gathered the food without really knowing what I was doing, grabbed the pharmacy key but didn't actually go into the pharmacy. I found what could be a Tunnel Snakes logo and returned to Mitten. Nothing fills my bladder quite like disappointing Moira. The last section of Chapter 1 is all about blowing off limbs and watching the complete series of The Mindless Adventures of Milton Minefield, available now on video and DVD. The minefield is not an insignificant amount of steps to the north. Even though I can't attack anything, me being a pathetic weakling is par for the course at this point. The only slight problem came from a raider who blew off a few of my kneecaps with a grenade. Once I got to the minefield, I began carefully disarming frag mines one by one with the precision of a surgeon and not accidentally setting off multiple mines and blowing up several cars. I ran around for a bit, picking up mines, and as I hobbled away from the minefield, I wished that I could do the world a favor and wipe Arkansas off the map. Back in Mitten, I told tales of my bone-breaking success to Moira, and with Chapter 1 complete, it was time to start Chapter 2. For no reason other than to embrace the pain, I decided to give myself a taste of what's to come later this year by using the power of gravity and a grenade to break as many bones as possible to return to Moira to see if she was right to drop out of medical school. She fixed me up, gave me an environment suit, and finally I'd gotten my second favorite stick, the repellent stick, and was off to kill some mole rats. I wasn't excited about killing rats. After all, it is Michael's birthday today. So I opted for the environmentally friendly option of stopping by the supermart to get revenge on the raiders who shot me a lot. This was a popular request for a challenge, but believe it or don't, this is not that bad of a weapon. It does 6 damage and can attack about as quickly as any other melee weapon. But what it does have is this wet, sloppy, slipped on a sponge, and cracked your noggin against the counter sound to it every time you attack something. I killed the raiders, leveled up, looked for snacks in their pockets, and left to find the mole rat den. But on my way there, I did spy with my little eye a vile whore who deserved to die. I cleaved her back in half with my stick, and when I did, what I saw was glorious. The smoke, coming from either my stick or her body, was a sign that she was finally dying, and her convulsing legs told me that it was not pleasant. I couldn't give her the satisfaction of crashing my game, so I dropped her body in the irradiated river to melt it away, pressed onward, took out a few raiders under a bridge, did a 360 when I discovered the citadel, and walked away in the opposite direction to find my brothers and sisters. They were not very accepting of me, probably because my stick caused their heads to explode. After watching the heads of several mole rats stain the wall with the blood that used to be inside them, I was still not 100% convinced that it was the stick that was causing it. So I kept going deeper into the sewers. It wasn't long before I found a quirk with the repellent stick. It doesn't work on robots. This Mark I turret took no damage, and with the barrel of its gun somewhere in my esophagus, I still had a 0% chance to hit it. But I didn't let that deter me. I kept going, killing more mole rats, disarming more mines, and ending the lives of more raiders. Once a solid chunk of the living creatures down there were beaten to death with this tree branch Moira found on the ground and dipped in green paint, I left the sewers, battled a mirelurk in complete darkness, and noticed that the repellent stick sort of glows in the dark. Back at Craterside Supply, I told Stupid that her stick was a complete failure, and she asked me to go plant a microphone in a mirelurk spawning pod. The good news is that the location I'm after is just across the river from the tepid sewers. Bad news is the mirelurks inside are mean and pack a hefty bag-sized punch. Well, they would if they had hands anyway. I wasn't too sure what I was after, but I found a cluster of eggs and just sorta jammed the metal doohickey inside it, left the building, and returned to Moira for the 6th time. With Chapter 2 complete, all that remained of the Wasteland Survival Guide was the 3rd chapter, also known as Chapter 3. This chapter requires going to a few far-off places, like Rivet City, so I put it on hold and broke into Moriarty's saloon to gather information about my estranged father. Rather than hacking my way into his terminal for information, I did things the fun way by being a thug for Moriarty. Some floozy owed the boss money, couldn't let that slide. I convinced her to pay me 300 caps, then I beat her to death with my stink stick and stole her belongings. Moriarty got his payment, I make a profit, and the bitch dies. It's a win-win-win situation. From there, I traveled to the tepid sewers to begin making my way to Galaxy News Radio. I encountered a group of centaurs who, on their own, are probably the toughest enemy I've faced so far. The super mutant stole that title when we both agreed that centaurs don't have rights and deserve nothing. I freed his captive, realized I'd just made a big mistake, and finished off the super mutant's work. I found the tunnels, took on a group of feral ghouls, fought another super mutant, exited the tunnels, did some damage to the super mutant's nearby Galaxy News Radio, and let Cat Club do the rest. Also, some time ago I cranked the difficulty up to 11. I set it to easy instead of very easy. When the super mutant behemoth arrived, I used the tried and true tactic of hiding and letting the expendable forces waste their lives doing what I could but didn't really feel like doing. With the big lad dead, I went inside GNR to talk to Three Dog. Doing a job for him sounded like it would require effort, so instead I spent 7 minutes trying to convince him to give me the information I needed, eventually succeeded, took the Child at a Heart perk, and left to stock my pile full of stim packs from the rudest doctor on the planet and traveled to the Citadel to make my way to Rivet City. Being the overachiever that I am, I killed the super mutants outside the Jefferson Memorial, and went inside to clear out the rest as well so that I wouldn't have to do it in the future. Sometimes I do this because ammo is scarce. This time, it's really only because I'm here now, so why not get it out of the way. The normal super mutants aren't too terribly tough to kill. They take around 20 whacks each. The brutes are about twice as resistant to green death stick, taking 40 solid wallops to kill, even with the added effects of Psycho. I went through a lot of stim packs, and the repellent stick was a little worse for wear, but the super mutants inside were all dead. The deed was done, and I set off into the world of Bethesda Graphics to find Rivet City. I thought for a second or two about whether or not I should kill Crow. He and his guard seemed to be in a relationship. All the more reason for them both to die. The guard went first, then the cow. In a twist I didn't see coming, the Crow cow was without a doubt the most time-consuming creature to kill so far. It took well over 100 smacks to get it to peacefully accept death. The first thing I did in Rivet City was ask around for information about the city's history. Everyone had different ideas about the past life of the boat, but Belle Bonnie flapped her gums and mentioned someone in the other half of the ship. I went ahead and talked to Dr. Lee to advance the story, even though I didn't really need to know where I was going to go next. I leapt from the balcony of the ship into the irradiated waters below to let my worries and skin be melted away. Navigated my way through Mirelurks and got the real history of Rivet City from Horace Pinkerton. Then a few Mirelurks broke into his lab and I sealed the door shut from the outside. Both the Mirelurks and Horace have no means of escape. I predict that they won't brutally murder each other, and instead, it'll become the hit new sitcom, I Love Lurky. I went back to Moira's rust hut, turned in the objective, bought and sold a bunch of stuff, asked why she's such a fucking freak, got my stick fixed or spayed, I haven't decided if it's a boy or if it's a girl yet, and journeyed to the land of places I haven't been to, in search of the official library museum. I talked to a Brotherhood scribe, played on a computer, and that was that. The last thing that needs to be done to complete the quest is to reactivate the robots at the Robco facility. I saved this one for last for a reason. There are a few mole rats and rad roaches inside the building, guarding the big book of science. I then plugged in the thing, and it went worse than I could have imagined. It confirmed my fears that robots can't be damaged by the stick. Now that wouldn't be so bad if their lasers weren't so damn effective, but they were, and I reckon there were at least 1,000 or more trying to kill me. All that Moira asked of me was to install the chip, so I didn't need to kill any of them. After escaping, I discovered Tenpenny Tower, brought a stick to a gunfight with Roy Phillips, returned to Craterside Supply, and for the first time in years, I completed the Wasteland Survival Guide side quest. And my reward for all that hard work was a mini-nuke. I expected it to be a complete waste of time, and was not let down in the least. With the path before me now clearer than ever, I fast-traveled to Tenpenny Tower to make the trek out to Smith Casey's garage. The few mole rat combat troopers guarding the garage stood no chance, and their superior officers inside fell before me alongside their recruits and auxiliary roaches. I entered the simulation. Everything seemed pretty normal, with Betty abusing the shit out of her powers as a veritable god. I activated the failsafe. Betty flaunted her height. A Chinese commando somehow lost consciousness after I escaped. I agreed to meet Dad back at Rivet City. He said maybe 3 words to me. I got lost in Rivet City again, and eventually managed to find myself at the still cleared out Jefferson Memorial. Pop sent me down to the basement to flip a switch, then made me haul my ass back up to the purifier to see how amazingly the light reflected off his nose. Then sent me back down to install a few fuses and then turn on a computer. But at least I got to play in the sewer, so it wasn't all bad. I was a bit concerned that because power armor is sort of part robot, my stick would be ineffective. It did damage, just not nearly as much as I would have liked. Somewhere between a super mutant and a super mutant brute for how many bonks it took to kill them. Dad got what was coming to him by making me his errand boy. The scientists were all rude to me in the tunnels, as if the one person keeping them alive is somehow to blame for this situation. I had a brief conversation with the ceiling with legs before we escaped the tunnel, arrived at the Citadel. I went straight to the library to see about Vault 87, got the location from a scribe, and fast-traveled to Smith Casey's garage to head north towards Little Lamplight. I took the Child at Heart perk earlier to make this easier on me. No save scumming my way through a speech check, or doing a side quest or glitching through walls. Just making jokes about his probably dead mother liking the way my ass looks. Murder Pass was pretty not great. I didn't die. I'd gone in with enough stim packs to bring a decapitated walrus back from the dead. But even with melee weapons at 100, the repellent stick just didn't do a lot of damage to the super mutants. And for whatever reason, they kept crippling my head. They'd crack it open, I'd tape it shut, then they'd slam their nail board against it and I'd become an egg that's been slammed against the wall again. Really frustrating. I wanted to make Fox's existence as depressing as possible. Rather than freeing him and letting him die fighting, or ignoring him altogether, I told him I'd flip the switch and free him. Then I left him down there forever. I ignored the super mutants on the way to the reactor chamber, partially thanks to a stealth boy that worked incredibly well for a couple seconds. The environment suit Moira gave me was a complete piece of shit, which I should have seen coming. I grabbed the Gek, ignored the muties again, and got abducted by the Enclave. Upon being released by the President, I immediately showed my gratitude by killing an Enclave officer. I found this particular encounter to be a bit on the humorous side. An Enclave soldier was attacking me with a ripper, and I blocked it with a repellent stick. It's funny, because saws are usually used to cut wood, but in this instance, the wood is blocking the saw. Just take a moment to appreciate that joke. As my sides recovered from the splitting they'd just received, I talked to President Eden, took a vial of his goodies, escaped the base, and returned to the Citadel to start finishing this fight. For some reason, I wasn't locked in place during this initial interaction between lions and lions. Cat Club Commander Lyons gave me a set of armor. Liberty Prime ascended somewhere into the stratosphere. I tried to kill Knight Captain Durga, but as she herself is shit, she is immune to the power of my stink stick. And I left the Citadel to run alongside the Brotherhood of Steel as Liberty Prime propagandized his way across the bridge and eventually to the Jefferson Memorial. I got overzealous and got annihilated by Liberty Prime. Sarah Lyons and I entered the memorial and began fighting our way through the Enclave soldiers littering the building. Sarah tried her best to be helpful, but all she did was blast me with a missile launcher multiple times. In the rotunda, I took almost every chem I had to get myself pumped up for what's to come. Colonel Autumn exploded into a pile of red goop, and we finally took back Project Purity. Last time around, I tried to push Sarah Lyons inside the purifier with me, which failed horrendously. This time, I had a new idea. I hit her with my stick until she loses consciousness. Then I seal the door and activate the purifier before she wakes up, killing both of us. I succeeded in beating the consciousness out of her, but she ran down the stairs and woke up before I had a chance to carry her limp body into the purifier. Then, a bright light took over my screen. It was the purifier. Because neither of us activated it, the purifier exploded. There was no waking up back at the Citadel after the slideshow. But I got what I wanted. Sarah Lyons and I both died at Project Purity, and I beat Fallout 3 with only the repellent stick. And that's going to do it for this video about whether or not you can beat Fallout 3 with only the repellent stick. If you enjoyed the video or learned anything, leave a like. Leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy the video or didn't learn anything. Join the Mitten Squad Discord server through a link in the video description. Follow me on Twitter @Mitten Squad. My name is Paul of Mitten Squad. Have a wonderful day.